Anthony Reynolds stood at the window of his downtown office, looking out at the city he'd called home his entire life. The morning sun reflected off the glass buildings, casting a golden glow across the skyline. He took a sip of his coffee and smiled to himself. After years of hard work, countless sleepless nights, and more setbacks than he cared to remember, he had finally made it. 3 weeks ago, Anthony had sold his tech company for a sum that still didn't feel real to him. The small app he'd built in his spare bedroom 5 years ago had grown into something valuable enough that one of the biggest names in Silicon Valley had come knocking. Just like that, the boy who grew up in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the east side was now worth 8 figures. His phone buzzed on the desk. It was Diane, his financial advisor. "Morning, Diane," he answered, setting down his coffee mug. "Anthony, I've got those investment options we discussed ready for you. Do you have time to go through them today?" Anthony checked his watch. "Actually, I'm free right now if you are." 20 minutes later, Diane was spreading documents across his desk. "So we've got the standard portfolio options here. Stocks, bonds, some real estate opportunities, and a few startup investments if you want to stay in that world." Anthony nodded, scanning the papers. They all looked promising, but something was missing. He'd spent his whole career building something from scratch, putting his personal touch on every aspect of the business. The idea of simply handing over his money to property managers or watching numbers change on a stock ticker felt hollow. "These are all great, Diane, but I'm looking for something more, hands-on, something I can really sink my teeth into." Diane tilted her head. "I thought you wanted to take a break after the acquisition?" "I did. I do," Anthony said, standing up to pace around his office. "But I'm not built for golf and beach vacations. I need a project, something with potential that I can help grow." As if on cue, his gaze landed on the window in the car dealership visible in the distance. Prestige Motors. The large lot with its rows of vehicles and fluttering pennants had been a fixture in town for decades. Anthony had walked past it countless times growing up, pressing his face against the fence to stare at cars he could only dream of owning. "What about a business?" he asked suddenly. "An existing one that needs new direction?" Diane followed his gaze. "Prestige? You want to buy a car dealership?" Anthony felt a spark of excitement he hadn't experienced since the early days of his startup. "Why not? Cars have always been my passion. Even when I was coding 18 hours a day, I'd take breaks to read auto magazines and watch restoration videos." "I didn't know that about you," Diane said, surprised. "My father was a mechanic," Anthony explained, memories washing over him. "Some of my best childhood moments were spent in his garage, handing him tools and learning how engines worked. He could never afford those luxury cars over there, but he could fix anything with wheels." Diane nodded thoughtfully and made a note. "I can look into it if you're serious. Do you know if they're even for sale?" "I've heard rumors," Anthony said. "Their sales have been declining for years. The owner, old Mr. Davidson, is well past retirement age but hasn't found a buyer. His son wasn't interested in taking over." "Let me make some calls," Diane said, already reaching for her phone. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of research. Anthony found himself staying up late reading industry reports, market analyses, and everything he could find about Prestige Motors. The dealership had been a local institution for over 40 years, but it had failed to adapt to changing consumer preferences and modern sales approaches. Its online presence was practically non-existent. Its sales team operated on outdated commission structures, and customer reviews painted a picture of an establishment stuck in the past. But beneath all that, Anthony saw potential. The location was excellent, the property valuable, and the dealership still had exclusive rights to sell several luxury brands in the region. A week later, Anthony sat across from Robert Davidson, the silver-haired founder of Prestige Motors, in a quiet corner booth of an upscale restaurant. "I appreciate you meeting with me, Mr. Davidson," Anthony said as they finished their meal. The older man nodded, a weariness in his eyes that spoke of decades of early mornings and late nights. "When your lawyer called, I was intrigued. We haven't publicly announced that Prestige is for sale." "I have a knack for recognizing opportunities," Anthony replied with a smile. "And I understand you might be looking toward retirement." Davidson sighed, looking down at his half-empty wine glass. I built that place from nothing in 1981. Just me and two salesmen in a lot half the size it is now. Pride filled his voice before fading into resignation. But times change. The internet, these direct-to-consumer startups, the economy. It's not the business it once was. What if it could be again? Anthony leaned forward. With some modernization, new ideas, but still respecting the foundation you built? For the next hour they talked. Anthony shared his vision for Prestige Motors, a blend of old-school customer service with modern technology and marketing. He spoke of community involvement, sustainability initiatives, and creating an experience that would make buying a car feel special again. By the time dessert arrived, Davidson was nodding along, a new light in his eyes. "You remind me of myself 40 years ago," he said finally, full of ideas and energy. "But I have to ask, why a car dealership? With your background, you could invest in anything." Anthony thought about his father, who had passed away 5 years ago, never getting to see his son's success. "Cars connect people," he said simply. "They're not just machines. They're part of life's biggest moments. First dates, family road trips, bringing newborns home from the hospital. I want to be part of that." 2 weeks and several meetings with lawyers later, Anthony signed the final papers in Davidson's office. The wood-paneled room was filled with memorabilia from 4 decades in the business. Photos with celebrities who'd purchased vehicles, awards, and the keys to the first car Davidson had ever sold mounted in a frame. "Well, that's it," Davidson said, setting down his pen. "Prestige Motors is yours officially as of 9 a.m. tomorrow." He stood and extended his hand. "Take care of her." Anthony shook the older man's hand firmly. "I will, and the name stays. Prestige Motors has a good history in this town." Davidson nodded appreciatively. "What's your first move going to be? New inventory? Staff changes?" Anthony smiled. "Actually, before I make any big decisions, I want to experience the dealership the way customers do. Get a feel for what's working and what isn't." "You mean like a secret shopper?" Davidson raised an eyebrow. "Something like that," Anthony replied. "I'll visit tomorrow, just walk around, maybe talk to a few salespeople. No one except you and my lawyer knows about the ownership change yet." Davidson chuckled. "That should be interesting. Carlton Barton has been my general manager for 15 years. Runs a tight ship, but he can be, set in his ways." "I look forward to meeting him," Anthony said diplomatically. After Davidson left, Anthony remained in the office, taking in the space that was now his. He walked to the window overlooking the lot with its rows of gleaming vehicles catching the late afternoon sun. From this vantage point, he could see customers wandering between cars, salespeople in their identical navy blazers approaching with practiced smiles, the service department with its open bays where mechanics worked on vehicles. This was a far cry from the tech world he'd come from, where everything existed in the cloud and success was measured in user engagement and download rates. Here, success was tangible. Happy customers driving off the lot, families finding the perfect vehicle for their needs, mechanics solving problems with their hands and tools. Anthony felt a mixture of excitement and nerves. He had the capital and the vision to transform Prestige Motors, but the auto industry was new territory for him. There would be a learning curve, resistance to change, and undoubtedly some missteps along the way. But as he watched a young couple emerge from the showroom, keys in hand and matching smiles on their faces, he knew he'd made the right decision. This wasn't just an investment. It was a chance to honor his father's memory, to reconnect with a passion that had taken a backseat to his tech career, and to create something meaningful in the community where he'd grown up. Tomorrow would be his first day as the owner of Prestige Motors, though no one on the lot would know it yet. Anthony smiled to himself, wondering what Carlton Barton and the rest of the staff would make of him when he showed up in jeans and a casual shirt. Just another customer looking at cars on a Thursday morning. Little did they know their world was about to change. Anthony woke up earlier than usual the next morning. The sun was just beginning to peek through his bedroom curtains as he sat on the edge of his bed, a mixture of excitement and nervousness swirling in his stomach. Today was the day he would visit Prestige Motors as its new owner, though no one there would know that yet. He opened his closet and purposely bypassed his usual attire of tailored suits and designer shirts. Instead, he pulled out a pair of well-worn jeans, a simple blue button-up shirt, and casual leather shoes. Looking in the mirror, he adjusted his collar and ran a hand through his short hair. Perfect. He looked like any other average customer who might walk into a dealership on a Thursday morning. Just another guy looking to buy a car, he said to his reflection, trying to get into character. The drive to Prestige Motors took about 20 minutes. As Anthony pulled into a spot in the customer parking area, he took a moment to observe the dealership from the outside. The large sign displaying Prestige Motors looked faded and outdated. The building itself, while imposing with its glass showroom, had a slightly worn appearance. Small details jumped out at him. Fingerprints on the glass doors, weeds poking through cracks in the pavement, a burned-out bulb in one of the exterior lights. First impressions matter, Anthony muttered to himself, making mental notes. He checked his watch. 9:15 a.m. The dealership had been officially his for exactly 15 minutes. Taking a deep breath, he stepped out of his car and walked toward the entrance. A bell chimed softly as Anthony pushed open the glass door. The showroom was spacious, with polished vehicles arranged strategically across the floor. Bright overhead lights reflected off their shiny surfaces. Despite the impressive display, Anthony immediately noticed the lack of customers. For a weekday morning, the place should have had at least a few people browsing. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to Prestige Motors." A salesman approached with a wide smile and an outstretched hand. His navy blazer had seen better days, and his name tag read, Thomas. "Good morning," Anthony replied, shaking his hand. "Just looking around today." "Absolutely, take your time. Any particular model catch your eye? We have some excellent financing options this month." Anthony noticed how quickly Thomas jumped to mentioning financing before even asking what type of vehicle he might be interested in. "I'm not sure yet. I'd like to just walk around first, get a feel for what you have." Of course, Thomas said, though his smile faltered slightly. "I'll be right over there if you need anything." As Thomas retreated to his desk, Anthony began to move slowly through the showroom. He ran his hand along the hood of a luxury sedan, noting the quality of the vehicle versus the outdated sales material sitting on its dashboard. The brochure was from last year's model, and the price sheet had been printed on cheap paper that had already started to curl at the edges. For the next half hour, Anthony circled the showroom, occasionally jotting notes on his phone. He observed how the salespeople interacted with the few customers who came in. Most followed the same pattern: immediate approach, quick pivot to financing or lease options. Little actual discussion about the vehicles themselves or the customer's needs. It was textbook old-school car sales, focused on closing deals quickly rather than building relationships. When Anthony ventured into the pre-owned section, he found it even more telling. The used vehicles were pushed to the back of the lot, many with dirty windows or minor issues that could have been easily fixed. The pricing was inconsistent. Some vehicles were clearly overpriced while others seemed suspiciously low. A different salesperson approached him here, an older man named Franklin who seemed less pushy than Thomas. "Looking for something specific?" Franklin asked. "Just browsing," Anthony replied. "How long have you worked here?" Franklin seemed surprised by the personal question. "Going on 12 years now. It's a good place. The car business has its ups and downs, but Mr. Davidson runs a decent shop." "I've heard the ownership might be changing," Anthony said casually, watching for a reaction. Franklin's eyebrows shot up. "Where'd you hear that?" "The rumor mill's always churning, but Mr. Davidson hasn't said anything to us." He looked genuinely concerned. "Not that it's any of my business, but we've all got families to feed, you know?" Anthony nodded sympathetically. "Of course. Just something I heard around town." After thanking Franklin, Anthony made his way to the service department. Unlike the showroom, this area was bustling with activity. Mechanics moved efficiently between lifts, the sound of tools and occasional banter filling the air. There was an authenticity here that the sales floor lacked. A woman in overalls with lead technician embroidered on the chest noticed him and approached, wiping her hands on a rag. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her name tag read Rita. "Just looking around," Anthony said. "I'm considering buying, but I like to check out the service department first. You can tell a lot about a dealership by how they handle repairs. Rita smiled appreciatively. Smart move. Most people only think about the buying experience, not what happens after. How long have you been working here? Anthony asked. Almost 20 years, Rita replied. Started as an apprentice right out of technical school. Mr. Davidson gave me a chance when not many places would hire a woman mechanic. And how are things now? Busy? Rita glanced around before lowering her voice. Between us? Not as busy as we should be. The sales department isn't bringing in the new customers like they used to, so our service contracts are down. Plus, management keeps cutting corners on training and equipment. She shook her head. Sorry, shouldn't be telling you all this. Not exactly a great sales pitch. No, I appreciate the honesty, Anthony said sincerely. After chatting with Rita for a few more minutes, Anthony made his way back to the showroom. He wanted to get a better feel for the sales operations and decided to pose as a more serious buyer. He approached Thomas again. That silver SUV, what can you tell me about its features? Thomas immediately brightened. Excellent choice, sir. The Luxury 7000 is our premium SUV model. Leather interior, sunroof, all the bells and whistles. Would you like to sit inside? Maybe take it for a test drive? Maybe in a bit, Anthony said. I'm curious about your inventory system. How many of these do you have in stock? The question seemed to throw Thomas off. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I could check the computer. That would be great, thanks. Thomas led Anthony to a desktop computer at his desk and pulled up the inventory software. Anthony noticed immediately how outdated the system looked. Clunky interface, slow loading times. Looks like we have 3 in stock. Different colors, though, Thomas said. Mind if I take a look? Anthony asked, gesturing to the computer. Thomas hesitated. Well, that's not really something we let customers do. I'm actually quite interested in the business side of things, Anthony explained. I run a small business myself. Reluctantly, Thomas stepped aside. Anthony took the opportunity to click through a few screens, taking note of the sales figures, inventory turnover rates, and pricing structures. The numbers confirmed what he had suspected. Prestige Motors was struggling. Sales were down nearly 30% compared to the previous year, and the average time vehicles spent on the lot before selling had nearly doubled. As Anthony was examining the data, he became aware of someone watching him. Looking up, he saw a tall man with gray-streaked hair standing a few feet away, arms crossed and eyes narrowed suspiciously. The man's crisp suit and authoritative stance suggested he was in management. Thomas, what's going on here? The man asked, his voice sharp. Mr. Barton, this gentleman was just interested in our inventory, Thomas explained nervously. Carlton Barton, the general manager Robert Davidson had mentioned. Anthony stood up and extended his hand. Just doing some research. I'm very interested in how dealerships operate. Barton ignored the outstretched hand. Our inventory system is proprietary information. I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the computer. Of course, Anthony said, stepping back. I was just curious about your business model. Your online presence could use some updating, and I noticed your inventory turnover rate is... Are you from Wilson Motors? Barton cut him off, his voice rising. I knew Greg would try something like this, sending someone to scope us out. I'm not from any competitor, Anthony assured him. Just a potential customer with an interest in the business. Barton looked Anthony up and down, taking in his casual clothes and relaxed demeanor. His expression shifted from suspicion to dismissal. Well, unless you're actually buying something today, I think you've researched enough. Thomas, help this gentleman if he's ready to make a purchase. Otherwise, we have serious customers to attend to. The condescension in Barton's voice was unmistakable. Anthony noticed how the manager's eyes flicked to his jeans and casual shirt, making assumptions based purely on appearance. Actually, I'd like to know more about your sales training program, Anthony said, maintaining his composure. I noticed some inconsistencies in how customers are being approached. Barton's face reddened slightly. Our sales team is highly trained according to industry standards. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do. As Barton stalked away, Thomas gave Anthony an apologetic look. Sorry about that. Mr. Barton can be a bit protective of the dealership. No problem, Anthony said, watching Barton disappear into an office with general manager on the door. Does he always treat potential customers that way? Thomas lowered his voice. Between us? He's been extra tense lately. Rumors about the dealership struggling. Pressure from the owner to improve numbers. You know how it is. Anthony nodded thoughtfully. I think I do. He spent another 15 minutes wandering the showroom, making notes and observing the operation from different angles. What he saw confirmed his initial assessment. Prestige Motors had good bones but was suffering from outdated practices, poor leadership, and a disconnection from modern customer expectations. As Anthony headed toward the exit, he felt more confident than ever in his decision to buy the dealership. The challenges were clear, but so was the potential. With the right changes and the right people, Prestige Motors could thrive again. Little did he know that his next visit would be far more eventful than this one. Anthony returned to Prestige Motors the following morning with a clear plan in mind. After yesterday's reconnaissance, he had spent the evening reviewing his notes and preparing for a more direct approach. Today, he would dig deeper into the dealership's operations before revealing his identity as the new owner. He arrived just after 10 a.m., parking in the same customer area as before. This time, he wore dark jeans and a navy button-up shirt, still casual but slightly more polished. As he walked toward the entrance, he noticed Carlton Barton's silver luxury sedan in the reserved parking spot near the door. Perfect. The general manager was in today. Inside the showroom, the scene was much the same as yesterday. Gleaming vehicles, bright lights, and a noticeable lack of customers. A different salesperson approached him this time, a middle-aged woman with an eager smile. "Welcome to Prestige Motors. I'm Denise. How can I help you today?" Anthony smiled warmly. "Hi, Denise. I was here yesterday just looking around. Today I'm interested in learning more about your fleet sales program." This wasn't a typical customer question, and Anthony could see Denise's professional smile falter slightly. "Fleet sales? You mean for businesses?" "Yes," Anthony replied confidently. "I'm considering replacing the company vehicles for my business. I'd need about 8 SUVs to start." Denise's eyes widened. This was potentially a major sale. "That's wonderful. Let me get our fleet specialist for you. Would you like some coffee while you wait?" "Coffee would be great, thanks." As Denise hurried off, Anthony wandered toward the center of the showroom where a luxury sports car was displayed on a rotating platform. He circled it slowly, noting the attention to detail on this particular vehicle compared to others in the showroom. It was clearly the centerpiece, meant to draw customers in with its sleek lines and vibrant red paint. "Admiring the Phoenix?" a deep voice asked. Anthony turned to see a tall man with salt and pepper hair approaching. He wore a tailored suit and a name tag that read Victor Fleet Sales. "It's a beautiful car," Anthony replied. "Our flagship model," Victor said proudly. "Now, Denise mentioned you're interested in our fleet program." "That's right. I own a tech company, and we're looking to upgrade our company vehicles." Victor's eyes lit up. "Excellent. Why don't we sit down in my office and discuss your needs?" Anthony followed Victor to a small office off the main showroom floor. Unlike the outdated computer system he'd seen yesterday, Victor's office featured newer technology and was neatly organized. Clearly, the fleet sales department received more resources than the regular sales floor. "So," Victor began after they were seated, "what kind of vehicles are you looking for and what's your time frame?" For the next 20 minutes, Anthony asked detailed questions about fleet pricing, maintenance packages, and delivery timelines. Victor answered each question professionally, though he seemed increasingly curious about Anthony's business. "You mentioned a tech company?" Victor asked during a pause in the conversation. "Which one, if you don't mind my asking?" "Reynolds Innovations," Anthony replied truthfully. "We're relatively small but growing quickly." Victor frowned slightly. "I don't think I've heard of it. What's your position there?" "I'm the owner," Anthony said simply. Before Victor could respond, there was a knock at the door and Denise appeared with a cup of coffee. "Sorry for the interruption. I thought you might still want this." "Thank you," Anthony said, accepting the cup. As Denise left, he turned back to Victor. "Actually, I'd like to see some of your sales reports and inventory data for the models we've discussed. I want to get a sense of their reliability and popularity." Victor hesitated. "That's not information we typically share with customers. I can assure you these models are among our most reliable." "I understand," Anthony nodded. "But for an order this size, I need more than assurances. Perhaps we could speak with Mr. Barton about making an exception." Victor's eyebrows rose slightly at the mention of the general manager's name. "You know Mr. Barton?" "Not personally," Anthony replied. "I just heard he's the person in charge." After a moment's consideration, Victor stood up. "Let me see what I can do." Please wait here. Once alone, Anthony took the opportunity to examine Victor's computer screen, which the fleet manager had forgotten to lock. It showed a spreadsheet of recent fleet sales, and the numbers weren't good. In the past 6 months, Prestige Motors had secured only 2 fleet contracts, both significantly smaller than what Anthony was proposing. A few minutes later, the door opened, but it wasn't Victor who entered. It was Carlton Barton, his expression a mix of interest and suspicion. Mr. Barton let the question hang in the air. Reynolds, Anthony supplied, standing to offer his hand. Anthony Reynolds. This time Barton shook it, though his grip was unnecessarily firm. Victor tells me you're interested in a substantial fleet purchase, Mr. Reynolds. 8 SUVs to start? That's right. And you own a tech company I've never heard of. Anthony smiled. The tech industry is vast, Mr. Barton. There are thousands of companies you've probably never heard of. Barton's eyes narrowed slightly. Perhaps, but most business owners I know don't wear jeans to negotiate fleet contracts. Times have changed, Anthony replied evenly, especially in tech. Now about those sales reports and inventory data. I'm afraid that's proprietary information, Barton said, even for potential fleet customers. Now, if you're serious about this purchase, we can discuss models, features, and financing options. Otherwise, he gestured toward the door. Anthony decided to change tactics. Actually, I'm also interested in how you structure your sales team's commission. The woman who greeted me, Denise, she immediately called for a specialist rather than trying to handle the sale herself. That suggests your commission structure might be siloed by department. Barton's expression hardened. Our internal compensation structure is none of your concern. It is if it affects customer service, Anthony countered. From what I've observed, your sales approach is outdated. Your online presence is practically non-existent. Your inventory system is at least 5 years behind industry standards. And your showroom layout prioritizes flashy models over the vehicles people actually buy. The general manager's face flushed with anger. Who exactly do you think you are? Coming in here criticizing our operation based on what? A few hours of observation? Anthony remained calm. I'm someone who sees potential being wasted. This dealership has a great location, strong brand partnerships, and some good people. But it's being held back by outdated thinking and poor management. That's it, Barton snapped, his voice rising. I don't know if you're from a competitor or just some wannabe business consultant, but we're done here. The commotion had drawn attention. Through the glass walls of the office, Anthony could see salespeople and a few customers looking their way curiously. Mr. Barton, Anthony tried again. I'm simply offering observations that could help. What would help? Barton interrupted. Is for you to leave now, before I call security. Anthony remained seated. I don't think that's necessary, don't you? Barton's voice dripped with condescension. Let me guess. You read a few articles about the auto industry, maybe took a business course online, and now you think you're qualified to tell me how to run a dealership I've managed for 15 years. Experience doesn't equal expertise if you're not learning and adapting, Anthony replied calmly. That was the last straw for Barton. He stormed to the office door and called out, Jeff, I need you over here now. A broad-shouldered man in a security uniform appeared almost immediately. Please escort this gentleman. Off the premises, Barton ordered, emphasizing the word gentleman with obvious sarcasm. Jeff looked uncertainly between Barton and Anthony. Sir, is there a problem? The problem, Barton said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear, is that this man has been asking inappropriate questions about our business operations and refusing to leave when asked. By now, a small crowd had gathered, salespeople, a few customers, and even Rita from the service department, watching with concerned expressions. Anthony stood slowly, keeping his composure. There's been a misunderstanding, Mr. Barton. The only misunderstanding, Barton cut in, is you thinking you could come in here and waste our time. Chef, please do your job. The security guard stepped forward awkwardly. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me. Anthony looked around at the watching faces, the confused salespeople, the embarrassed customers, Rita shaking her head in disapproval of the scene. This wasn't how he'd planned to reveal himself, but Barton had forced his hand. Before I go, Anthony said calmly, reaching into his jacket pocket. There's something I think everyone should know. Barton smirked. What? You're going to threaten to leave us a bad review online? Anthony pulled out a folded document and handed it to the security guard. Jeff, Would you mind reading the top paragraph of this document? Out loud, please. Jeff looked to Barton, who nodded impatiently, clearly expecting some irrelevant complaint letter. The security guard unfolded the paper and began to read. Transfer of ownership, Prestige Motors, Inc. This document certifies that as of 9:00 a.m. on Thursday, April 15th, all assets, property, and management rights of Prestige Motors, Inc. are hereby transferred from Robert Davidson to Anthony Reynolds. Effective immediately. A stunned silence fell over the showroom. Jeff reread the document silently, his eyes widening. This, he stuttered, this is notarized and everything. All eyes turned to Anthony, who calmly buttoned his jacket and addressed the room. As Jeff just confirmed, I am Anthony Reynolds, the new owner of Prestige Motors. As of yesterday morning, I've been observing how this dealership operates firsthand, as a customer would experience it. Barton's face had gone from red to ashen. This is ridiculous. Robert would have told me if he was selling. He did try to tell you, Anthony replied. According to him, you dismissed the possibility of a sale as rumors and didn't want to discuss it further. The general manager opened and closed his mouth, at a loss for words. Anthony turned to address the gathered employees. I want to assure everyone that I didn't come here to cause disruption or make hasty changes. I came to understand what's working and what isn't. Many of you have valuable experience and insights that I want to learn from. He turned back to Barton, whose expression had shifted from shock to a mixture of embarrassment and fear. Mr. Barton, I believe we should continue our conversation in private. In your office, or rather what will soon be my office. The showroom of Prestige Motors had fallen completely silent. Every eye was fixed on Anthony and Carlton as they stood facing each other in the center of the room. The document confirming Anthony's ownership had passed from hand to hand among the employees, each person reading it with widening eyes before passing it along. Carlton Barton looked as though someone had pulled the floor out from under him. His usual confident posture had crumpled, and a thin sheen of sweat had appeared on his forehead. My office, he finally managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. We should continue this in private. Anthony nodded. Lead the way. As they walked toward the manager's office, Anthony could hear the whispers breaking out behind them. The news would spread through the dealership like wildfire. He hadn't planned to announce his ownership this way, but Carlton's actions had forced his hand. The general manager's office was exactly what Anthony expected. Traditional, imposing with heavy wooden furniture and walls lined with sales awards and automotive memorabilia. A large window overlooked the showroom floor, allowing Carlton to keep an eye on his sales team at all times. Carlton closed the door behind them and moved behind his desk, as if the physical barrier might provide some protection. He didn't sit down. I don't understand, he said, struggling to regain his composure. Robert and I spoke just last week about the quarterly projections. He never mentioned selling. He tried to, Anthony replied, taking a seat in one of the chairs facing the desk. According to him, you dismissed the rumors and changed the subject. He decided it would be easier to complete the sale quietly. Carlton sank into his chair. But why? And why to you? No offense, but you're not even in the auto industry. I'm an entrepreneur who recognizes potential, Anthony said simply. Prestige Motors has a strong foundation but has failed to adapt to changing times. Robert knew that. He wanted someone with fresh ideas to take over, not just another dealer who would run things the same way. Carlton's expression hardened. So you came in here undercover, spying on us, making judgments without understanding how this business works. I came in as a customer to experience what customers experience, Anthony corrected him. And what I found was concerning. Your sales approach is outdated. Your online presence is minimal. Your inventory system belongs in the last decade. And most importantly, you judge people based on their appearance rather than treating everyone with respect. That's not fair, Carlton protested, though his voice lacked conviction. This is a luxury dealership. We cater to a certain clientele. A shrinking clientele, Anthony pointed out. Your sales are down 30% from last year. Your service department bookings have dropped by nearly half. The average time vehicles spend on your lot has doubled. These aren't just observations, they're facts from your own reports. Carlton's jaw tightened. So what now? You fire everyone and bring in your tech buddies to turn this into some kind of startup playground? Anthony leaned forward. Actually, no. I believe most of the people here are skilled professionals who haven't been given the right tools or direction. Rita in service is clearly excellent at what she does. Denise genuinely wanted to help me. Thomas knows the inventory inside and out. The problem isn't the team, it's the leadership. The implication hung in the air between them. Carlton swallowed hard. You're firing me. It wasn't a question, but a resigned statement. Anthony studied the man across from him. Carlton Barton had dedicated 15 years to Prestige Motors. His methods might be outdated and his attitude problematic, but he clearly cared about the dealership in his own way. I haven't decided yet, Anthony said truthfully. That depends on our conversation right now. Carlton looked up, surprise evident on his face. You'd consider keeping me on? After how I treated you? That depends, Anthony repeated. I need to understand whether you're capable of change. The auto industry is transforming rapidly. Electric vehicles, online sales, subscription models. The old ways of doing business are disappearing. Prestige Motors needs to evolve or it will die. The question is, can you evolve with it? For a long moment, Carlton said nothing. Anthony could almost see the thoughts racing behind his eyes. Pride battling with practicality, anger with self-preservation. Finally, Carlton straightened in his chair. What would you expect from me if I stayed? First, complete transparency, Anthony replied without hesitation. I need to know the real state of this business. Not just what the official reports say, but the issues that don't make it into spreadsheets. Second, openness to new ideas, even if they contradict how you've always done things. And third, a commitment to treating every customer with respect, regardless of how they're dressed or what car they drove in with. Carlton winced at the last point, but nodded slowly. And if I can do those things, then you'd remain part of the leadership team, though in a different capacity. Your experience would be valuable during the transition. A knock at the door interrupted them. Jeff, the security guard, poked his head in. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Barton, and Mr. Reynolds, but there's a situation on the floor. The employees are asking questions, and some customers are getting confused about what's happening. Anthony stood up. We need to address this now. The last thing we want is for rumors to spread. Carlton hesitated, then nodded and rose from his chair. You're right. When they returned to the showroom, they found the employees had gathered in a loose circle, speaking in hushed tones. They fell silent as Anthony and Carlton approached. Anthony stepped forward. I know this is sudden and you all have questions. Let me start by introducing myself properly. I'm Anthony Reynolds, and as of yesterday morning, I am the new owner of Prestige Motors. A murmur ran through the group. Anthony raised his hand to quiet them. I want to be clear about something. I didn't come here to clean house or turn everything upside down overnight. I came here because I see tremendous potential in this dealership and in the people who work here. He looked around, making eye contact with as many employees as he could. Over the next few weeks, I'll be meeting with each department to hear your ideas and concerns. This isn't just my dealership, it's ours. And together we're going to bring Prestige Motors into the future. The tension in the room began to ease. Anthony could see relief on many faces, though uncertainty remained. What about Mr. Barton? Someone called out from the back of the group. All eyes turned to Carlton, who stood slightly behind Anthony. For a moment he seemed unsure what to say. Then he stepped forward to stand beside Anthony. Mr. Reynolds and I have had a frank discussion, Carlton said, his voice steady. There will be changes in management structure, but I'll be staying on to help with the transition. Anthony could see the surprise on many faces. They had clearly expected Carlton to be fired on the spot. Now, Anthony continued, I know you all have jobs to do and our customers deserve our full attention. We'll have a proper all-hands meeting tomorrow morning before opening to discuss details. For today, please return to your duties and know that your jobs are secure. As the group dispersed, Thomas approached Anthony hesitantly. Mr. Reynolds, I just wanted to apologize for yesterday. If I had known who you were, you would have treated me differently, Anthony finished for him. And that's exactly why I didn't tell you who I was. I wanted to see how Prestige Motors treats ordinary customers, not VIPs. Thomas nodded, understanding dawning on his face. I get it, and it's a wake-up call we probably needed. A wake-up call with a purpose, Anthony assured him. Not to punish, but to improve. Throughout the day, Anthony made a point of speaking with as many employees as possible, from the newest salesperson to the most experienced mechanic. He listened more than he talked, noting their frustrations, their ideas, and their hopes for the dealership. By late afternoon, he found himself back in the service department, where Rita was finishing up with a customer. "So," she said after the customer had left, "you're the new boss." "That's right," Anthony confirmed. "Though I prefer owner to boss. A boss tells people what to do. An owner builds something alongside their team." Rita studied him thoughtfully. "Nice words. Hope you mean them." "I do," Anthony assured her. "Your department is actually one of the bright spots in the dealership. You run a tight ship, your team respects you, and customers trust your work. I want to learn from what you're doing right." The compliment caught her off guard. "Thanks. We try our best even when management—" She stopped herself. "Even when management hasn't given you the resources you need," Anthony finished for her. "That's going to change." As the day drew to a close, Anthony found himself standing in the center of the empty showroom. The staff had gone home and the lights had been dimmed except for those illuminating the display vehicles. Tomorrow would be the real beginning, his first official day as the active owner of Prestige Motors. He pulled out his phone and dialed Diane, his financial advisor. "So?" she asked when she picked up. "How did the big reveal go?" Anthony smiled, looking around at the dealership, his dealership. "Not exactly as planned, but sometimes the unplanned moments are the most revealing. And the verdict? Still think it was a good investment?" Anthony thought about everything he'd seen and heard over the past 2 days. The problems and the potential, the outdated systems and the dedicated people. "Better than good," he replied. "This place has heart, it just needs direction. And starting tomorrow, that's exactly what it's going to get." The early morning sun cast long shadows across the Prestige Motors parking lot as Anthony arrived for his first official day as owner. He had purposely come in an hour before the all-hands meeting to gather his thoughts and prepare. As he unlocked the main entrance, he was surprised to find someone already inside, sitting in the waiting area with a cup of coffee in hand. "Carlton," Anthony said, genuinely surprised. "You're here early," the general manager stood up. "Couldn't sleep much last night. Thought I'd get a head start on those reports you wanted. The real ones, not the polished versions we send to corporate." Anthony nodded appreciatively. "That's a good start." "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday," Carlton continued, his voice more humble than Anthony had heard before. "About adapting or dying. You're right. I've been doing things the same way for so long it's hard to imagine a different approach. Change is never easy," Anthony acknowledged, "but it is necessary. Come on, let's talk in your office." As they walked through the quiet showroom, Anthony noted how different the space felt without the hustle of daily business. Peaceful, full of potential. In Carlton's office, the general manager handed him a thick folder. "These are the real numbers," Carlton explained. "Sales breakdowns by model, service department performance, customer retention rates, all of it, with my notes on where I think the problems are." Anthony leafed through the papers, impressed by the thoroughness. "This must have taken all night," Carlton shrugged. "Like I said, I couldn't sleep. And honestly, it was eye-opening to look at everything together like this. We've been slowly declining for years, not just the past few months. I just didn't want to see it." For the next half hour, they reviewed the reports together. The picture they painted was concerning but not hopeless. The dealership's core business was solid, but it had failed to adapt to changing customer expectations and technology. "Your honesty is appreciated," Anthony said when they finished. "More than you know." By 8:30, the staff had gathered in the showroom. There was a nervous energy in the air as people whispered among themselves, stealing glances at Anthony and Carlton standing together at the front. Anthony stepped forward and the room fell silent. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming in early. I know yesterday was unexpected." This drew a few nervous laughs. "Today marks a new beginning for Prestige Motors, and I want to start by being completely transparent with you all." He took a deep breath. "The dealership has been struggling. Sales are down, service appointments are declining, and our online presence is practically non-existent in a world that's increasingly digital." A few people shifted uncomfortably, but most nodded in acknowledgement of what they already knew. "But," Anthony continued, "those are all fixable problems. What's not broken is the foundation. You, the people who make this place run. During my visits this week, I saw dedication, knowledge, and potential that's been held back, not encouraged to flourish." He gestured to Carlton. Mr. Barton and I have had some frank discussions about the future of Prestige Motors. Going forward, he'll be transitioning to a new role as Director of Traditional Sales, focusing on our established customer base while we develop new channels. Carlton nodded, accepting the demotion with more grace than Anthony had expected. I'll be bringing in some new team members to help with our digital transformation, but no one is being replaced. Instead, I'm asking everyone to expand their skills and embrace new ways of doing business. Anthony outlined his initial plans: a complete website overhaul, digital inventory management, transparent pricing, improved customer follow-up, and a revamped service department with online scheduling and status updates. This won't happen overnight, he assured them. We'll take it step by step, with training and support along the way. I don't expect anyone to become a tech expert by tomorrow, but I do expect everyone to be open to learning. As the meeting concluded, Anthony asked department heads to stay for more detailed discussions while the rest of the staff prepared to open for the day. There was a new energy in the room as people dispersed, cautious optimism replacing the uncertainty of yesterday. Over the following weeks, the transformation of Prestige Motors began in earnest. The physical changes were the most visible: fresh paint, updated signage, a redesigned showroom layout that emphasized customer comfort over cramming in as many vehicles as possible. But the deeper changes were in how the business operated. Anthony brought in Luis, his former tech company's lead developer, to oversee the digital transformation. Together, they built a state-of-the-art website and inventory management system that integrated with the service department. Customers could now book test drives online, check real-time inventory, and even start the purchasing process from home. The sales team underwent extensive retraining. Gone were the high-pressure tactics and artificial urgency. Instead, salespeople were taught to be product experts and customer advocates, guiding people to vehicles that truly met their needs, rather than pushing whatever had the highest commission. Rita's service department received a complete technology upgrade, with tablets for technicians, real-time updates for customers, and transparent pricing that built trust. She thrived with the new resources, implementing ideas she'd had for years but never been able to pursue. Carlton's transition proved more challenging. The first month he oscillated between reluctant cooperation and stubborn resistance. But a turning point came when an older customer, one of Carlton's regulars for years, raved about the new online service booking system. Even an old-timer like me can use it, the customer had told Carlton. Saved me an hour of waiting around. You folks are really stepping up your game. Slowly, Carlton began to see that change didn't mean abandoning everything he knew. It meant enhancing it with new tools and approaches. The most significant change, however, came in the dealership's culture. Anthony instituted an open-door policy and regularly spent time on the sales floor, in the service bays and in the back office, learning from his team and demonstrating that good ideas could come from anywhere. One of those ideas led to Prestige Motors' most successful initiative, a monthly cars and community event where the dealership parking lot was transformed into a gathering space with food trucks, music, and family activities. People who might never have considered visiting a luxury dealership came for the event and ended up browsing vehicles without pressure. 6 months after Anthony's dramatic revelation as the new owner, Prestige Motors hosted a special celebration for staff and their families. The showroom had been cleared of vehicles and transformed into a party space with catering, music, and a presentation area. Anthony stood before the gathered crowd, looking out at the faces of people who had gone from suspicious strangers to valued colleagues. When I bought this dealership, he began, some people thought I was crazy. Car dealerships are dinosaurs, they said. Everything's moving online. But what those critics missed is that buying a car isn't just a transaction, it's an experience, often a milestone in someone's life. Our job isn't just to sell vehicles. It's to make that milestone positive and memorable. He clicked to the first slide of his presentation, showing a graph of the dealership's performance over the past 6 months. The line started low on the left side, dipped slightly in the first month of transition, and then curved steadily upward. Sales are up 35%, Anthony announced to applause. Service department bookings have increased by 50%. Our customer satisfaction scores are the highest they've ever been. And most importantly, Our employee satisfaction survey shows that 89% of you are happier in your jobs now than you were a year ago. He clicked to the next slide. Showing before and after photos of the dealership, the difference was striking, not just in the physical appearance but in the energy that was visible even in still images. This success isn't because of me, Anthony continued. It's because of all of you who were willing to try something new, to learn and adapt, to bring your best ideas forward. His gaze found Carlton standing near the back of the room. Some of you had to make bigger adjustments than others, and I want to especially acknowledge those who had the courage to question their own, long-held beliefs about how this business should work. Carlton gave a small nod of acknowledgement, a hint of a smile on his face. Today we're not just celebrating 6 months of strong numbers, Anthony concluded. We're celebrating the birth of a new Prestige Motors, one that honors its history while embracing the future, one that values every customer equally regardless of what they're wearing or driving when they arrive, and one that recognizes its greatest asset is the people who work here. As the crowd applauded, Anthony stepped away from the podium and mingled with the staff and their families. He stopped to chat with Rita and her husband, complimented Thomas on his recent record-breaking sales month, and shook hands with the newest hires in the digital marketing team. Eventually, he found himself face-to-face with Carlton, who was nursing a glass of sparkling water near the refreshment table. Quite a turnaround, Carlton said, gesturing around the room. I didn't think it was possible, but here we are. Here we are, Anthony agreed. You know, none of this would have worked without you eventually getting on board. Your knowledge of the industry and the local market has been invaluable. Carlton seemed genuinely touched by the acknowledgement. And I wouldn't have learned all these new tricks without someone pushing me out of my comfort zone. He paused, then added with a wry smile, though you could have introduced yourself properly from the beginning. Anthony laughed. Where would be the fun in that? Besides, I got to experience the infamous Carlton Barton treatment firsthand. Never living that down, am I? Not a chance, Anthony replied good-naturedly. But sometimes our worst moments lead to our best opportunities for growth. As the celebration continued around them, Anthony looked out at what his impulsive investment had become. Not just a successful business, but a community of people working together toward a common goal. The journey had been challenging, occasionally uncomfortable, but ultimately rewarding in ways that went far beyond the financial returns. Prestige Motors wasn't just selling cars anymore. It was building relationships, creating experiences, and proving that even the most traditional businesses could thrive in changing times with the right leadership and a willingness to evolve.